From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Top of the morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Something's off on the camera there on the back. That sign is not slanted. It's on my nerves. I just noticed it, so I apologize. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in this Thursday morning. We've got a packed show. I mean, if you missed yesterday's show, epic. And when I mean epic, I mean, I've been doing this podcast for 7 years. I have never received so many email comments and messages after a show. The download numbers are absolutely off the charts. It's going to throw everything off for the foreseeable future. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being a voice of reason and of spreading the message. I'm eternally grateful. That being said, geopolitics is tightening up. There's a reason for it, folks. There's a reason China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, they're all on the move. We're less than 45 days, I think 46 days from election day. It's tight. By all indicative polls, this is anyone's election to take. They obviously have a preference. These adversaries have a preference to who they would like to see potentially win the presidency. And they're all trying to gather as much as they possibly can in the next 45, 46 days until election day. And then they'll obviously recalibrate based on what happens on November 5th. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Let's get the show going. Before I do that, though, join me for a coffee cup cheers, y'all. Coffee cup cheers. Double espresso from Lavazza. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and start with a huge dismantling of a multi-tiered botnet of hijacked IoT devices that are being commandeered by the Chinese Communist Party and one of its state-sponsored espionage hacking operation. The botnet has been tagged with the moniker Raptor Train. It's packed with hundreds of thousands of small office, home office, and Internet of Things devices. It's targeted entities in the US and Taiwan across critical sectors like military, government, higher education, telecommunication, and the defense industrial base. Based on the recent scale of the device exploitation, they suspect hundreds of thousands of these devices have been entangled by this network since its formation back in May of 2020. Now, ask yourself this: what happened in March of 2020 that would lead to an influx of a whole bunch of new internet IoT type of devices that would likely be not as secure as they would be anywhere else? Tell you, it starts with a C and ends with a D, right? And so the Chinese, knowing the influx, knowing the work from home, and how do they know that? They're the supply chain, right? When you were ordering your router, your IoT device to work from home, when companies were retrofitting and they couldn't get it from their favorite supplier, you were ordering from Amazon, from Alibaba, from whoever. The Chinese knew that. They're part of that supply chain. They infiltrated it, very much like what the Israelis allegedly did. Israel has not taken responsibility to the Hezbollah terror organization in Lebanon. There's more on that later on the show. So stay tuned. All right, so the Black Lotus Labs, the research arm of Lumen Technology, said the botnet is the handiwork of the Flax Typhoon, a known cyber espionage team that's financed and operated by the Chinese Communist Party and its tentacles. It's been tasked with hacking into Taiwanese organizations as well as U.S. organizations supporting a free and independent Taiwan. Since the middle of 2023, Black Lotus has tracked the APT building up a new IoT botnet that at its height contained more than 60,000 active compromised devices. They estimate that more than 200,000 network attached NAS servers and IP cameras have been affected over the last 4 years. The botnet has continued to grow. Hundreds of thousands of devices believed to have been entangled since its formation. The company described the botnet's C2 infrastructure as robust, featuring a centralized Node.js backend and a cross-platform front-end application called Sparrow that handles sophisticated exploitation and management of infected devices. All in all, Sparrow allows for remote command execution, file transfers, vulnerability management, and DDoS attack type of capabilities. Although they've yet to observe any activity from this specific botnet, the attackers are exploiting 20 device types using both zero-day and known vulnerabilities to include them as a tier 1 node. These include modems and routers from companies like ActionTech, Asus, DriveVec Vigor, and Microtech, and AP cameras from D-Link, Hikvision, Panasonic, QNAP, and Fujitsu. In its technical documentation, said the number of active tier 1 nodes is constantly fluctuating, suggesting operators aren't concerned about the rotation of compromised devices. Change one, take one offline, another one pops, and it kind of continues to kind of organically grow that way. They're not worried about that as much. Researchers observed the botnet operators conducting extensive scanning efforts targeting U.S. military, U.S. gov, IT providers, and defense industrial base types of organizations as well. The Black Lotus Labs has null routed traffic to the known points of the botnet infrastructure, including the distributed botnet management. The reports of law enforcement agencies in the U.S. are working on neutralizing this specific Chinese botnet. So there's that. And if you want to stick to China for a second, FBI Director Christopher Wray at the Aspen Cyber Summit kind of accused a company listed on the Shanghai Stock Exchange of being directly involved in China's state-sponsored hacking activity. That name, I mean, you gotta love China for their authenticity and the way they name their companies, right? Like someone in the Chinese Communist Party goes, "Leader, supreme leader, I have a great idea. What? We will use this company and we'll call it Integrity Technology Group. No one will suspect it of anything because it has the name Integrity, like Integrity Farms, right?" So Integrity Technology Group, also known as Youngjin Sichai Cheng, is a cybersecurity business that was named on Wednesday morning by FBI Director Christopher Wray, responsible for running the botnet associated with Flax Typhoon. So the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory, published following the statements at the Aspen Cyber Summit, accused the company of compromising hundreds of thousands of IoT devices dating back to 2021 with a MySQL database for controlling the botnet containing over 1.2 million records of compromised devices. The FBI stated it had engaged with multiple of these victims and assessed that the compromise was consistent with their TTPs and infrastructure and associated with Flax Typhoon. Wray described Flax Typhoon as targeting everyone from corporations and media to universities and government agencies. So all in all, we're seeing that the Beijing-based cybersecurity company was already known to be affiliated with China's intelligence. Is there not a company in China that's not affiliated with the Chinese intelligence agencies or government? They all are. It's one large circle. That's why we need to divest from China, expand and work and support the economies of countries that want and respect the type of Western values of free speech, freedom of the individual, rather than these communist nations. So hopefully that'll happen there. So we continue. Again, geopolitical here, folks. This morning, a packed week, just geopolitical happening everywhere. So a second wave of attacks on Hezbollah happened yesterday, just a day after the PagerCon attack. This time it was walkie-talkie and solar energy systems that also all detonated, one detonating during a funeral of one of the terrorists that was killed in yesterday's attacks. But these today attacks went off, burning down, and you can see the video here on the screen from the Times of Israel. They're kind of showing the variety of online footage that's been shared right there. That last one was a funeral happening in Lebanon for one of the killed terrorists, where another terrorist was there bidding farewell to that guy, and then his device exploded as well. Again, this is the death toll is 20 has been reported dead right now. They said 12 yesterday, but we know that they're lying about their death toll, like Hamas lies about their death tolls in Gaza, and like China lied about the death toll of the pandemic in 2020. They're saying like 5 people died. No, a whole lot more died there. So I can tell you from an unconfirmed from a confirmed source I know, somewhere where who shared with me on basis of anonymity, there's hundreds of dead terrorists, thousands injured that will not be able to return to the battlefield. They're blinded, they've lost a limb, or they've lost functioning of their liver, lungs, or otherwise. So this attack that's alleged to Israel has really done work there as well. And obviously, see cars were blown up where these walkie-talkies were and whatnot. And again, these are some of the images of the devices where so a lot of stuff going on. So let's understand this. This wasn't all a cyber attack. This was a sophisticated supply chain attack where explosives were planted in these devices, enough explosives to not make them heavy enough to make them suspicious and still allow them to be operable and still allow them to work and do everything they do, but then have a D-Day type of push, have a sip of coffee, hit a button, bam, and it happens. We know all that happened, right? There's a cyber element in the fact that it's an exploit. They created an exploit and put an exploit on there to allow all of this to happen because the detonation was an overheating battery on the pagers. We don't know what the detonators were on these larger walkie-talkies as of yet. So we'll kind of keep that in mind there as well. But staying to the axis of evil, Hezbollah, a Shiite group, that's financed and backed by Iran. Everything they have is from Iran. Well, Iran, as we reported earlier this summer, hacked the Trump campaign. They then attempted to turn over stolen materials to the Biden-Harris campaign in order to support, I guess, the Islamic Republic of Iran has officially now supporting the Democratic nominee for president. Should tell you everything you need to know there. They've tried to turn over stolen materials to the Biden-Harris campaign, according to federal officials from ODNI, FBI, and CISA, in a joint statement saying the Iranian hackers that hacked the email of some members of the Trump campaign back in June and July attempted to send those emails and some of those excerpts, stolen non-public material from the campaign as text in the emails to potential staffers or key individuals in the Democratic campaign. At the time, it was still President Joe Biden. Now we know the presumptive, now the nominee is Vice President Kamala Harris. So, although, so the federal officials claim that there's currently no indication indicating that the Biden-Harris campaign even cooperated with this or used this information. The statement claims that Iran's goal was to stoke discord, undermine confidence in the electoral process, also likely try to damage. Trump was literally, he had Iran broke in his 4 years in office. And so we'll see what happens there. So there's that story for all of y'all as of this morning. In additional stuff going on in with Iran, the latest cyber attack on the Middle Eastern nation using its proxies in cyberspace. Iran is vamping and ramping up its cyber operations against rivals and some of its allies in an attack linked to Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and APT-34 targeted government industries in Iran. We now see something similar, including attacks at Jordan, Lebanon, and Pakistan, according to analysis by Checkpoint. Again, Iran is heavily trying to influence politics in Jordan. They really want to kind of surround Israel, right? So they're not able to get everything they want to get from the Egyptians, but the Egyptians also allowed all these weapons to go into Gaza. But they're trying to essentially stage a coup in Jordan right now, and they're heavily trying to stage a coup in Jordan through the Muslim Brotherhood, which is another arm that aligns with the Shiite and the Iran regime and axis of evil. They've obviously with Hezbollah in Lebanon and some of their proxies in Syria, they kind of want to surround Israel in order to launch a multi-pronged attack. We've talked about this about a year ago after the October 7th attack, kind of what was supposed to happen on October 7th when Hamas kind of pulled the trigger earlier than all of its other partners and did what they did. Iran cyber operations, again, continue to grow. They're targeting oil and gas industry in the UAE, in the US, looking to gather intelligence. Additionally, we've seen them actually target different organizations with ransomware, and they're targeting both the Democratic and Republican presidential campaigns in order to sow discord within the population. And again, they may not be able to beat us through the bullet, but they can beat us by separating us. So keep that in mind there. The fact that they sent this to the Harris campaign, they may not be trying to help the Harris campaign. They just may be trying to stow an irreconcilable, make the country irreconcilable after the election. Again, all things that do matter. Politicians don't rule this nation. We are all accountable one to the other. So Checkpoint with a big report there as well. A North Korean threat actor tracked as UNC 2970 has been using job-themed lures in an effort to deliver new malwares working to critical infrastructure sectors, according to Google's Mandiant. Google Mandiant detailed the activities linked to North Korea back in March of 2023. The group was attempting to deliver malware to security researchers. Now they're trying to do it to target critical infrastructure employees in critical infrastructure country and critical infrastructure sectors in the US, UK, Netherlands, Cyprus, Germany, Sweden, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia. They've been engaging potential victims over email and WhatsApp, claiming to be a recruiter for major companies. They then send a password-protected archive, apparently containing a PDF document with the job description, and then that essentially drops a backdoor and a loader on it, deploys the loader, and then deploys a new backdoor named the Mistpen and a lightweight backdoor designed to download and execute PE files on those compromised systems. And all in all, that's what they're trying to do. If you haven't subscribed to our Substack, please make sure to do so right now. jamesazar.substack.com. Everything uncensored is on Substack and X and nowhere else. If you're not in those two places, please go subscribe now. Huntress is rising the alarm over a wave of cyber attacks targeting foundation accounting software, an application commonly used by contractors in the construction industry. Threat actors have been observed brute forcing the application at scale, trying to use default credentials to gain access to victim accounts. According to Huntress, or multiple organizations in plumbing, HVAC, concrete, and other sub-industries have been compromised via foundation software instances exposed to the internet. What's common is to keep a database server internal and behind the firewall or VPN. The foundation software features connectivity and access by a mobile app. For that reason, TCP port 4243 may be exposed publicly for use by the mobile app. This port offers direct access to the MySQL. As part of the observed attack, threat actors were targeting default system admins accounts in the Microsoft SQL Server instances, which all in all, within the foundation software, the account has full admin privileges over the entire server, which handles database operation. And again, these are companies that typically have an MSP, they don't have a CISO, and these types of attacks make it really easy for them to actually take money out of these accounts. And these people go through a lot of money, right? Construction companies, these plumbers and HVAC, some large projects, right? These are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that are exchanging. Take one, take two, take three, take four, get out, $500,000. Not a bad day's pay for brute force. And again, no one's paying attention. We can all impact that by just working, and we all know someone who knows someone. So just talking to them about it, kind of giving them an hour of our time to help just build a little bit more resiliency will save them a whole lot of headache. And a lot of these people don't have cyber insurance either, so they end up having to eat the loss, and some of them can't afford it. Gitlab is releasing more security updates. This is the second week in a row that Gitlab is doing this. This addresses the self-managed installation of Gitlab Community Edition and Enterprise Edition. It solves a critical SAML authentication bypass vulnerability. The security assertion markup language SAML is a single sign-on authentication protocol that lets users log in across different services using the same exact credentials. The flaw has been given a CVE 2024-45409er. It arises from the issue in the OmniAuth SAML and Ruby SAML libraries, which GitLab uses to handle SAML-based authentication. This flaw impacts GitLab versions 17.3.3, 17.2.7, 17.1.8, 17.0.8, 16.11.10, and all prior releases of those branches. And it's been addressed in the later versions of that as well. So you want to make sure you get that updated. And they did release signs of exploitation that you can find in our show notes as well. Finally, the House Energy and Commerce Committee on Wednesday voted to mark up 2 landmark children's online safety and privacy bills. This comes on the heel of Instagram launching a teenager-friendly version with more parental controls of Instagram and moving all Instagram users under the age of 16 to that version here. The Senate, which merged the bills, approved the legislation in a 91-3 vote back in July. On Wednesday's markup hearing, committee chairperson Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington has long championed comprehensive federal privacy legislation without success. Tearfully spoke about the dire need for the bill's passage as she held up pictures of children who've died by suicide or accidents tied to their exposure to the social media content. The bill's known as the, if you haven't seen her press conference, you won't see it in the media, but you should go look it up. Tearjerker, absolute tearjerker. She stood there. She said, "This needs to go through. This is bipartisan. Yes, we're headed towards election. Yes, the House is going to break soon for the last leg of this, but get this passed, get it on the president's desk, get it signed, and let's get it out there and let's protect our children." So all in all, a bill that hopefully, once it's marked up and pushed out there, we'll do a deep dive on it as well. And finally, Suffolk County, New York, suffered a significant ransomware attack back in September of 2022. A legislative committee in Suffolk County provided a brief blaming the county for the ransomware attack on a failure of leadership, including a lack of incident response plan and failure to respond to FBI warnings of potential infiltration prior to the ransomware attack. Suffolk County operated using a variety of IT teams, had no CISO, resulting in a lack of coordination on how to prepare for a cyber threat. The attack has so far cost the county and its taxpayers more than $25 million in remediation cost and other expenses. And you can see more in the show notes as well. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern here live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.